and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's easy leopard print cupcake tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this gorgeous little leopard print cupcake. I was inspired to make this actually by a makeup tutorial that YouTube suggested that I watch yesterday. The girl from Eyedolize Makeup did a leopard print eyeshadow and red lip tutorial, and I loved it. So I thought, you know what, I'm kind of in a leopardy mood today. I'll leave a link to her tutorial in the description box below, and if you decide that you want to maybe pair your cupcakes and your makeup together for some reason, it's a really cool tutorial to watch. So tools and equipment that we will be using today, I've got candy melts. You can either use candy melts or you can use food color paste. But if you use food color or food color paste, you're going to need to add a little bit of alcohol. So a clear alcohol, either a high percentage vodka or Cake Decorators rose spirit. I went with candy melts or with chocolate today just because it's something that a lot of you guys will have easier access to. So I've got some very pale brown, which is like 80% white chocolate melted with about 20% dark or milk chocolate added in. So it's still a brown color, but it's really light. And I've got some melted black candy melts. I've got some of our perfectly pipeable buttercream frosting just in vanilla, and I'll leave a link to that recipe in the description box below. I've got some fondant or some ready to roll icing. Now I coloured mine with an ivory. You really kind of want a little bit of a caramelly colour. I've got a cupcake and I baked mine in, these are a Wilton liner. So I managed to find a really cute little leopard print cupcake liner to match. You don't need this. Could have baked those in a red cupcake liner. They would have been just as beautiful, or a plain brown, but it's a little bit of an added extra. I've got some cornflour just in a cornflour shaker. I've got a circular cookie cutter and I will leave dimensions of that in the description box below. So let's get started. The first thing that we want to do is we want to prepare our cupcake and I guess our little domed top for this. So we do have a whole tutorial on our channel, My Cupcake Addiction, which shows you how to get this lovely domed top. I won't go too far into it today. If you haven't done a domed top before, you can go and refer to that tutorial, and it sort of goes into a little bit more detail about getting that perfectly domed surface. So just a bit of cornflour down, swipe around your piece of fondant or caramel, whatever you're using, and we're just going to roll it out. I'm going to roll it out quite nice and thin here. And I'm just going to find a really nice clean part of the fondant and I'm going to give it a cut out. Now, as I mentioned, I'll leave dimensions for the sizing of this circle cutter in the description box below. But what you're looking for is something that's about 2 sizes bigger than the top of your cupcake there. So you can see there, it's just going to give us enough room to put a domed top on and then to cover it. Put that off to the side and we're going to use that buttercream frosting and we're going to use the back of our knife. So I'm just going to sort of scrape that frosting down into the sides, not onto the sides and not over the sides, just into the sides of the cupcake. And that way you can see there the sides still remain, or the pleats of our cupcake liner still remain really nice and clean, but we are getting a really nice covering for that cupcake. So I'm just going to scoop a little bit more on, or a fair bit more on, and I'm just using my knife, just working it back and forward to create a really nice, just a rounded top. This is a really great way to cover your cupcakes, particularly if your cupcakes have a habit of not coming out really nice and round on top when you bake them yourself. So a perfectly domed cupcake can be relatively hard to achieve with a lot of different recipes. This is a great way to kind of trick everyone into thinking that you just bake perfectly domed cupcakes straight from the get-go. All right, so there's just a bit of a dome. Don't be too neat with it. You want it to be relatively even, but it doesn't have to be terribly neat. You can see that we did put a lot of frosting on, but then we've scraped a lot of it back off. So we're going to take that little bit. Now, before you put on your piece of fondant, just use your finger and just go around and just sort of wipe up the sides. So now I'm just going to take that fondant, I'm going to stick it smack bang in the middle, and I'm going to push down with my fingers and just meet it up at the edges. So if any of your frosting does come out the sides there, that's pretty normal. Just keep sort of pushing it, and as I'm pushing it, I'm stretching the fondant a little bit where it needs to go. All right, so now before you go into too much smoothing, you want to use your finger and just wipe around the edges and get off any of that excess frosting, and then just close the gap. And you might need to do that a couple of times if you've got a little bit of excess frosting going on there. All right, now at this point, you want to take the palm of your hand and you're just going to sort of roll the cupcake in it. The palm of your hand is an amazing decorating tool. It gives you smoothness, it gives you shape, it gives you a lot of different things. And that's the basis. That's your nice, clean, smooth dome. All right, now from here, you want to take your candy melts or your chocolate. And I like to start with sort of the bigger little dots that I'm doing. So just dip your paintbrush in, and what you want to make here is sort of like little, almost like a little comma, but look, they're leopard print shapes. They're not meant to be perfect. That's the beauty of them. It really doesn't matter how big, how small, how many, how messy. The black part is really what gives us our leopardy sort of a look. And this lighter brown part is just to fill in the centers. All right, now I like to start like that. So I've done relatively even in the way that I've gone around, and this is just for my first sort of a layer. Leopard spots aren't even, and we don't want them to be too even, but for my first layer, I always do them quite even so that I can get a good idea of how it's all looking. So now you want to come down, and what you want to do is you're going to take that black candy melt, and you're just going to do kind of almost like an edging on it, but you don't want the edging to be neat. So don't be afraid to come thicker in some parts and thinner in others. And the other thing that you want to remember about leopard print is that it doesn't meet up. The spots don't actually go all the way around the colour. So you leave a little gap at the top and a little gap at the bottom, and that's what gives you your leopardy spot. So we'll go around and we'll just keep on filling in all of these little spots. All right, so once you've done your first little lot, and I've actually just microwaved my chocolate. I often get asked by people how I keep my chocolate from going firm or from becoming unmelted. And the answer is I don't. I actually microwave it, sometimes during the tutorial, but generally just before I want to use it. So you want your chocolate to be as fluid as possible. And if that means just reheating it during the process, then just reheat it. So now I'm going through and I'm putting in some more of our little commas just in some of those spaces, and these ones are slightly smaller than the last lot that we put in. And don't be afraid to come down the sides, all the way down the edges, particularly if you've decided to use one of those cool patterned cupcake liners, because then it will almost camouflage your top into your bottom of your cupcake. So like I said, if you decide to use food color paste, you're going to need to leave quite a little while for these to dry. If you don't use alcohol and you do use food color paste, we're talking like literally days for it to dry. It just takes forever. So I would definitely not use food color paste without the alcohol component, but this chocolate will be dry and set in a matter of seconds after applying it. All right, now we're getting to this stage and you can see that we're getting to the pointy end of our leopard print cupcakes. And look, they're definitely not the quickest, but they're such a beautiful cupcake that I think they're worth the extra time they take to create. So now I'm just going to go in any of those little gaps. You can do them different sizes, some smaller ones, some bigger ones, just whatever you think you need. I think those 3 will do. All right, now when you get to this point, just go through and you just want to do just some sort of black, not sort of spots, but just kind of, I guess just black markings, almost like the ones that we've just made, but without the brown inside. This is just going to be to fill in any spots, take it down the edges a little bit, and it's just going to be to make it look a little bit more authentic, like an actual leopard. So that is our basic leopard print cupcake. So you can see there with our little leopard on top and then the leopard underneath, it's really quite a lot of leopard, but it's turned out really cool. Now I finished this one here off with one of our little puffy fondant bows. So we've got a whole tutorial on the puffy fondant bow, but basically it's just a little bit of red fondant that we fashioned into a bow shape. Now I'm just going to roll out a couple of just tails for this, and you can either use a little bit of water or you can use a little bit of that candy melt or chocolate and just put a little bit there on the back of the bow and then stick it on. Now bear in mind you do want your bow here, or the top of your bow, to cover that tail, so I always like to just kick them up a little bit and then take another little bit of chocolate and sort of almost stick them down. If you kick the bow up a little bit or the tail up a little bit, it gives that bow sort of the illusion of movement. So instead of looking like it's stuck to the cupcake, it kind of looks like it's got a bit of movement. So this piece here should overlap. And once again, we're going to kick it up and just a little bit of chocolate under there just to hold that little kick. And then a little bit more chocolate underneath the bow section. With the bow, I suggest that you make the bow a couple of hours in advance, and that's really just so that it's got a little bit of time to firm up. Sitting that one on top. So there you've got a really cute little cupcake design, funnily enough, inspired by a makeup style. I hope that you guys will use this leopard technique on cakes and cupcakes for years to come. And as always, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.